Anyway, in April of 1938, as a mere roughly 8 weeks, let's say, after the Germans moved in, I ceased to go to school. And unlike my friends, my father had this business, this shop, this small manufacturing plant. I simply started work there, not legally as an apprentice, but because that was no longer possible. But just, I went to work with him every day and worked with him and tried to learn a little bit about it and help out in general. The day he was arrested, it was very interesting because as I said, the police came about 6 o'clock and took him away. They wouldn't let him take anything. I mean, he was dressed, but they wouldn't let him take a toothbrush or food or change of clothes, anything like that. And he was gone. And he wouldn't tell us. He was a plainclothes policeman. Wouldn't tell us where he was going. Meanwhile, but it was being sort of work-oriented. My mother said, well, you must go and open up the shop because people are they're waiting to go to work. So this is what I did. And subsequently, my mother did find out where he where he was. He was at a local police station, if you will, of some size. And she was able to not see him, but drop off a package of toilet articles and change of clothes, underwear, whatever. And the next day he was gone. He was gone, and she was told that he had been deported to Dachau. It was Dachau concentration camp along. There's one train load of, and that was a rather harrowing journey, I gather. And as far as my own life was concerned, we simply carried on. I started to open and close the shop, and the workers were very loyal, and we continued to work and sell.
Were they Jewish workers?
No, not at all, not at all. About 6 or 7 of them. They were not Jewish workers. Not one of them was. And we continued. Most of my father's products, furniture products, were for export, almost exclusively to England, as it happened. And that we naively assumed that this was a good thing because they wanted the foreign currency and all that sort of thing. And that went on. My father, as I said, was in Dachau. There was some very limited communication, like one postcard a month or something like that, with very few lines. But there was communication.
What did you know about Dachau at that time?
Oh, we knew a lot about Dachau, because we knew about German concentration camps. Those of us who cared about this thing. You've got to remember that Dachau, there were the concentration camps established by the Nazis in Germany were sort of an extra legal facility, and the inmates were in protective custody, whatever that meant. In other words, you could have a prison sentence, for example, and be immediately transferred from the proper prison to Dachau. The kinds of people who were in the concentration camps, of course, were almost all Germans. I mean, the German opposition were the first victims of Nazis, and there's no question about that. They were communists and socialists and Catholics or any kind of religious opposition, conscientious objectors, Seventh-day Adventists, for example, small minority, homosexuals, people like that. And they all had their distinctive triangular badges which identified why they were in there, like the politicals were red and the homosexuals had the famous pink triangle you may know of. So that was that, and I suppose we settled down, my mother and I, and continued to run the business and make a sort of a living.
The morning that your father was taken, had you been aware of that happening in any other families? Or was that
well, not at the time. It happened. It was beautiful. I mean, Eichmann was a very efficient organizer. I mean, this just happened all that morning. There were 5,000 people arrested, probably within a few hours of each other. No, at 6 o'clock. I mean, the night before we didn't know. No, it just happened. It was a well-executed operation.
Do you remember your father leaving, any, like his expression or the parting words? Or
I do not remember that at all. The reason I can say that was somewhat because I've thought about it recently. I'm writing a sort of a personal history. And I've thought about this, and I've been prompted by someone else well qualified to do the prompting in writing, and I can't remember. I honestly cannot remember.
I was going to ask you.
I don't even remember whether my mother was crying, which she was wont to do, and I don't. I don't think she was. It was so much of a shock, you know, because even the policeman was relatively gentle. He was just a cop doing his job, you know. I mean, and when he rang the doorbell, it wasn't, you know, usually when these people came to one's door, you know, to do horrible things. I mean, they would hammer and scare you through the, you know, the way they made themselves, they made their presence known, but. No, he just rang the doorbell, and my mother opened the door, and there he was, and he asked for him by name, and she said, well, come with me. So that's all.
And you had no sense if it was for an hour or a week? Or
we had no idea. You know, we didn't know what was happening. It was not, within 24 hours we knew.
How did you know?
Well, through my mother. She had, basically she knew through some contacts of my father, you know, people who are politically savvy know what's going on, and she knew who to call. Who said, oh, somebody already knew. Oh yes, they're on their way to Dachau. I mean, that's when they were, and it was confirmed within a few weeks. I mean, it took some time before we could actually know.